Graduated, mom has cancer, GF leaves, I spiral into alcohol, mom passes, hit rock bottom, and I'm losing my mind. Just wow. Create a new account for safety. Also, this is my first Reddit post, so I hope the formatting is appropriate. Summary: I recently transitioned into adulthood, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, my girlfriend ended our relationship, I developed a drinking problem, my mother passed away, I am financially unstable, and I am struggling with depression. I feel like I have reached the lowest point in my life and am losing my grip on reality. I am a 25-year-old male, and I believe the most effective way to share this narrative is in chronological order. It is a lengthy account, so please bear with me. Less than a year ago, this should have marked the start of one of the happiest periods in my life. I had just earned my degree in a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field. I was in a committed relationship, and I felt prepared to confront the challenges of the real world. However, this turned out to be the onset of a downward spiral for me. My family traveled for hours across the state to celebrate my graduation, and we hosted a gathering at my apartment afterward. During this event, I noticed a growth on my mother's hand, roughly the size of a golf ball. Concerned, I inquired about it. She then informed me, "Dear, you know that I've been battling cancer for some time. We mentioned it to you a few months back." To be honest, I do not frequently call home, and my memory is somewhat unreliable, so I am unsure if I was informed previously or not. It felt like a bombshell, but regardless, she appeared otherwise healthy and was in good spirits, and the treatment seemed effective, so I was not overly alarmed. She had just driven across the state, after all. Just a few days later, we flew across the country together to attend another graduation ceremony for some family members. At that moment, everything seemed relatively fine. After returning home, I spent the following months looking for a job and eventually secured one close to my hometown. I tried my best to communicate and coordinate living arrangements with my girlfriend, but somewhere along the way, a significant disconnect occurred that resulted in her resenting me. During this period, we fought almost daily, and I believe we both inflicted emotional and occasional physical harm on one another. Nevertheless, we eventually moved in together. Despite my new job offering better pay, unforeseen circumstances nearly pushed me into homelessness, and finances became extremely tight. I was fortunate if I managed to have just $50 left after paying bills each month for necessities like gas and groceries. I severely miscalculated our financial situation and ended up in an unaffordable place. Due to her resentment and the consequences of my actions, we quickly drifted apart and broke up early into our new lease, leading to a situation where we had to coexist for a while. This period was still tumultuous, characterized by even more arguments, some resulting in police involvement, and me almost being falsely accused of domestic violence. Fortunately, there were witnesses who confirmed I never laid a hand on her. She soon began a new relationship with someone else while staying in my apartment since the new partner lived out of state. In spite of all the upheaval, I could not bring myself to stop supporting her. She had nowhere else to go, and I could not, in good conscience, abandon her. As if that were not enough, late one night, I received an unexpected call from my father. I found it unusual that he was calling so late, so I answered. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail. After brief small talk, he revealed that my mother's condition had worsened and that the cancer was advancing. My heart sank. I could hardly comprehend it. Just 4 months prior, we had been traveling together, and now she was in hospice care. What is going on with the universe? In truth, I never visited her there. He described her situation to me, and I felt utterly unable to handle the details. There was no way I could go see her. Instead, I deluded myself into believing she would recover and exit hospice care. The accumulated stress weighed heavily on me, leading me to turn to alcohol. I drank excessively. I would awaken, drink, drive to work, leave work, stop at a liquor store, and then drink myself to sleep. Apparently, I can feign sobriety quite well, as my bosses never suspected anything. I was even pulled over one morning while intoxicated and somehow avoided receiving a DUI. This should have served as a wake-up call, but it did not. I simply continued. Eventually, I was diagnosed with depression and prescribed medication. I began mixing my medication with alcohol, hoping I would experience some reaction in my sleep and simply cease to exist. I also started therapy, but I struggle to be open during sessions. I find myself offering half-truths and sugarcoating everything. I have attempted to genuinely express my feelings, and I have made some progress, but honestly, therapy often leaves me feeling worse. At some point during all of this, my mother was transferred to end-of-life care, and we organized a gathering to honor her life. She enjoyed celebrating. It was meant to be a joyful occasion. However, it was the first time I had seen her since my graduation 6 months earlier, and she was not the same person I remembered. She was bedridden, barely able to form coherent sentences, constantly needing medication, on a liquid diet yet vomiting after nearly every spoonful. Yet, when she saw me, she simply smiled and requested a hug. I cried in her embrace, but I could not endure the situation for long. I left because it was too much for me, could not enjoy the gathering, and ended up drinking excessively afterward. A few weeks later, just before Thanksgiving, she passed away. I honestly do not recall much from this period. I felt as though I was functioning on autopilot. I know I attended the funeral, but I do not remember anything about it. I remember going to Thanksgiving dinner, but I overindulged in alcohol yet again. I drifted through life until December when my ex finally moved out. She took most of the decorations and some furniture, but I finally felt like I could breathe again. I had not been alone for years, and it was, in all honesty, liberating. I refrained from drinking long enough to thoroughly clean my apartment and spent that time relaxing, reflecting, and pondering. What should I do with this newfound freedom? I have all this free time, and I can choose how to spend it. That is when I realized I had lost all motivation to engage in anything. Perhaps it was the medication that rendered me numb, or maybe I simply lacked any hobbies. I am still uncertain. I ended up using most of my newfound time on dating applications, casually hooking up with random people, constantly flirting online, or drinking. While the attention initially felt gratifying and bolstered my confidence for the first time in my life, I soon lost interest. The only positive outcome from this experience is that about a week ago, I woke up with a distaste for drinking. So at least now, I am sober. In recent months, I have been trying to explore new hobbies, meet new individuals, and spend quality time with my family, hoping that it might help me communicate better. However, for various reasons, I end up alienating people. Each time I have worked to resolve an issue, I put in so much effort, only for it all to implode. I keep attempting to rebound after each setback, but with every failure, I feel as though a piece of me diminishes. Lately, I find myself sitting at home, scrolling through YouTube videos, watching mere seconds of each one before moving on to the next. I experience these absurd mood swings where one moment I feel fine, and the next I am spiraling emotionally, often ending up crying on the floor for an hour. I occasionally go for drives, but I become frightened because I experience mood swings while driving. It takes every ounce of willpower not to drive straight into a tree or wall. I am beginning to lose track of time. I know that I am aware, but it feels like I blink, and suddenly hours have elapsed. This is starting to take a toll on my body. I have had a stomachache for weeks and struggle to eat. I am losing weight, and my memory has worsened. I will wander around the house trying to remember what I was doing, only to recall it as soon as I give up, then forget it again en route to whatever task I intended to complete. I have been experiencing paranoia. When I hear the heating system activate at night, I convince myself that someone is breaking in. I search my home for intruders and feel insane when I find nothing. I feel like I am at rock bottom, losing my sanity, as if I am suffering from dementia or schizophrenia. I am terrified that it is only getting worse. Apologies for the length of this message. I am uncertain about what I am seeking or if I am seeking anything at all. Story 2. First fight over Valentine's. I wanted a greeting but got nothing. Dinner with a guy friend triggered more confusion. We're still learning. Please be considerate in your comments about both of us. I apologize for the length of this post. To provide some context, I am in a long-distance relationship with a 16-hour time difference, with my location being 16 hours ahead of his. We always make it a point to call each other every day. The time he goes to bed coincides with when I attend university. I am currently pursuing my postgraduate studies, and vice versa, although he goes to work instead. I will be sharing my perspective in terms of my own time to avoid any confusion. We have been together for 1 year now. 3 days prior to Valentine's Day, we had a disagreement. I acknowledged that it was a trivial issue, and I stubbornly rejected his perspective as valid. Consequently, our communication over the past few days has been somewhat cold and distant. I also felt a bit upset because Valentine's Day was approaching, and he had yet to mention it or inquire about my plans. However, the day before Valentine's Day, I came clean, apologized, and admitted I was being unreasonable, which helped us return to a better dynamic. At that point, I had already told him I would be going out with my best friend, female, 23, for dinner and drinks the day after Valentine's. I also mentioned that I had purchased flowers for her and one for myself. He responded with, "Oh, okay, that's cool." Then Valentine's Day arrived for me, while for him it was still the day before. After I woke up, we had a brief conversation, and that was it. When I arrived at university, I found myself crying in the car because I was subtly expecting something a simple greeting or a message would have sufficed, even though I understood he had just started a new job and may not have had the means to gift me anything material. But I thought to myself that perhaps I was overthinking, as I often do, and that he might greet me the next day when it was officially Valentine's Day for both of us. I shared my feelings with him via message, and he explained that he wanted to wait until the following morning in his time zone so it would be the 14th for both of us. So I waited. He went to sleep, my classes ended, and when he woke up, I still received no greeting. My feelings of anticipation turned into disappointment, and I brought up my earlier messages, asking if he found them annoying. He commented that it was, kinda, annoying, which made me cry, and I unintentionally raised my voice at him. I didn't mean to yell. I was simply overwhelmed by my emotions. I expressed that I just wanted to receive something nice from him again, not anything material, but a kind word. I went on to explain how embarrassed I felt about the situation and how I had never had to express my feelings in this manner before. He countered that he thought we had already acknowledged our affection for each other when we previously spoke and questioned why I expected more. He confessed that he felt he had been in trouble due to our previous argument and simply wanted to chill. After I reminded him that it was Valentine's Day and that it was generally expected to acknowledge that, he conceded he was at fault, but mentioned he had urgent matters to attend to. He asked if it would change anything if he told me Happy Valentine's Day now, to which I replied that it would. He wished me a Happy Valentine's Day, but I remained upset and quietly reflected on how unimpressive the greeting felt. He had to depart, so we exchanged "I love yous" before the call ended, leaving me feeling humiliated as I went to bed crying afterward. The following morning, I woke up to a message from him an hour after I fell asleep, asking to call. It was the day I was going out for dinner and drinks with my close friend. I called him, and we made some small talk, which felt a bit awkward. He was hesitant to discuss our previous conflict until I prodded him for his thoughts. Once again, he acknowledged his mistake and apologized. I calmly shared my perspective and feelings as we revisited the same conversation from the previous night, but this time with a calmer tone. Ultimately, we were fine. Fast forward to dinner and drinks, my best friend and I arrived at the bar by 8 p.m. because we wanted to finish early and return home. I kept my boyfriend updated throughout the evening. I posted a photo of the venue and our drinks on my Instagram story, which one of my classmates' friends, Tom Male, 25, noticed. He is the type who is open to anything and has hinted at wanting me to introduce him to one of my friends. Earlier in class, I had mentioned my plans for the evening, and seeing no issue since my best friend was also interested in meeting him, I invited Tom over. The three of us had a great time. They got along well and engaged in conversation and banter. As the night progressed, I dropped Tom off at his place and then my best friend at hers. I figured my boyfriend was asleep by that point, so I didn't provide any further updates. Afterward, I drove home and went to bed. This morning, the routine continued after waking up. He called me, asking how dinner went. I recounted the entire evening, including Tom's arrival and how well he and my best friend got along. Suddenly, he reacted with, "That's weird, what the heck?" I was perplexed. I asked for clarification, and it quickly became evident that Hugh was getting frustrated with my inability to grasp his feelings. He expressed that it was strange for me to have stated it would only be my best friend, and now suddenly include Tom immediately after our significant disagreement. I attempted to rationalize the situation and pointed out that he typically has female friends, so why should this be a problem? Then he grew upset, mentioning that his ex had behaved similarly before cheating on him, which added to my confusion. "So you think I'm going to cheat on you?" I asked. He denied that was his point but insisted it was just a strange situation for him. We went back and forth, and I remained confused about where I had gone wrong. Finally, I asked, "Would it have made a difference if it were my male best friend from childhood?" He replied, "Yeah, because you've known him since you were kids," leaving me bewildered. Does that mean I'm not allowed to have new friends? He became frustrated and insisted we drop the subject. I decided to pause and reflect on his remarks. Still confused, I pretended to understand and apologized. I realized this was a flawed move, but he was getting angrier, and I didn't want to exacerbate the situation. I was equally drained. We had been bickering for almost 5 consecutive days. I thought about how he must have felt the day before when he mentioned wanting to relax after all the arguing. So I apologized, admitting my lack of thoughtfulness and recognizing it was a mistake to test his patience. "It's whatever," he responded. We sat in silence for a few minutes on the call. When I tried to apologize again, he simply acknowledged me with an mmhm and returned to his game. The conversation fell silent, so I began organizing my room and setting up my desk to prepare for studying due to upcoming exams. Throughout this, we exchanged brief comments like, "What are you up to now?" and "Cool," until he gradually became more responsive and started sharing about his game. I was polite while feeling distant and detached. Eventually, he said he had to jump onto another call with his friends for gaming, which is routine for weekends, and we exchanged goodbyes without expressing, "I love yous." While I was typing this out, he later texted to apologize for getting heated and expressed that he didn't believe I intended to hurt his feelings or invalidate them, reiterating how strange the entire situation felt to him. I responded with my own apology for being inconsiderate and assured him I understood that it must have been frustrating to have to articulate his feelings. He reassured me with, "It's cool." When I asked, "So are we good?" he replied, "Nah." I initially thought he was joking, so I retorted with, "That's ridiculous," but he did not respond again. Now I'm left confused about what to think and how to handle this. I'm exhausted and have exams to focus on. Please help me understand. I feel like I have been inconsiderate and selfish, and I feel foolish for not comprehending everything. I also feel guilty because I seemingly did something wrong, despite not fully understanding what that wrong was. Edit, please refrain from suggesting I break up with him. Despite these issues, he is a good boyfriend. This is our first experience with a long-distance relationship, and we are both navigating how to handle it effectively. Story 3. OMG. Just a week after witnessing my dad hit our foster dog, my mom is already getting another. Am I wrong to report this? I am a 28-year-old female with autism living with my parents, who are both 61 years old, along with our 4 cats, 3 elderly, 2 of which are deaf, and 1 kitten, and 2 medium-sized dogs. Our family has always been passionate about animals. We volunteered at a shelter during my childhood and occasionally fostered pets. However, over the past year, my mother has gradually immersed herself in a Facebook algorithm filled with animal rescue postings. It has reached a point where she absently scrolls through and shares countless posts stating, "One day left before being killed," or "The county shelter is murdering these puppies," along with, "Share now, these dogs are on the urgent list." She spends nearly all her leisure time doing this, and our conversations mostly revolve around various rescue dogs and their situations. Eventually, she persuaded my father to allow us to foster dogs. Although I was somewhat hesitant because my mother lacks skills in dog training, she prefers not to be mean, which results in no real discipline aside from saying no. When she catches them misbehaving, I attempted to maintain a cautiously positive outlook. Unfortunately, it soon became evident that they were unwilling to take even the most fundamental steps necessary in a foster home. Firstly, you are expected to place the dog in a quiet room or crate for a little while, allowing them to acclimatize to the new smells and sounds of the household. A dog that is overwhelmed by new experiences is unlikely to be as tolerant or friendly toward other animals. They need time to decompress before being slowly introduced to existing pets. Since we are taking in completely random dogs from the top of the kill list that week, we have no background information on them to determine any potential aggression issues with other animals. This makes it crucial to be cautious. The shelter requires a face-to-face meeting between the dogs before adoption, but this does not provide insight into behaviors such as possessiveness, prey drive, or food aggression. In November, we welcomed our first foster dog, Gidget, a 40-pound Labrador mix. My parents entered through the garage with her and immediately released her from the leash. All our cats and dogs were already loose. They did not inform me about the new dog's presence, nor that she was loose in the house with my kitten, until I received a text over an hour after her arrival. Can you take Lightning, our elderly cat, and Jasper, my kitten, upstairs while we go out to dinner? The new dog keeps growling at them, and Lightning is unable to hear her and walks right up to her. I learned that Gidget was aggressive toward cats. Numerous times, she would suddenly growl and lunge at cats across the room, even if they were relaxing far away. We always managed to intervene or the cat would escape. Though Gidget eventually settled down after a few weeks of lashing out at the cats, my parents seemed to think we had successfully socialized her with them, not acknowledging that the cats were in constant danger. The cats are allowed to roam freely with the dogs, even when we are not at home. Eventually, Gidget was adopted. My parents acknowledged that their method of introducing her was incorrect and promised to do better next time. A week later, we welcomed Jack, a 65-pound pit bull and shepherd mix. Upon entering the house, my father attempted to guide him down the hallway to the designated bedroom. When Jack resisted and pulled on the leash, my father simply shrugged and let him roam. He promptly returned to working in the basement office just 2 minutes after Jack's arrival. Since Jack did not lung at any cats within that short time frame, my parents deemed him safe to leave unsupervised with them. It quickly became apparent that Jack was going to be a challenge. On his first day, he pulled down a bag of treats and 3 containers of food from the counter and devoured them, even finishing the containers. A friend remarked that if he had shown any aggression towards food, he could have harmed our smaller dogs, as he had a significant treat in his mouth and our dogs were half his size. No one was home at the time. Throughout January, there were multiple destructive incidents involving windowsills, the couch, 2 remotes, books, and a bag of dog food. I repeatedly advised my mother to crate him. I even got support from the foster agency for this recommendation. Although she agreed in person, 2 weeks passed without any action taken on her part to secure a crate. Then, Jack managed to access medication twice in one day. The first incident occurred in the morning when he consumed the cat's antibiotics and half the bottle they were in. Following a panicked trip to the vet, my mother still released him, leaving him unsupervised while she went out for lunch. This time, he found my antidepressants. Thankfully, he ingested the one that was safer for him. The pet poison control hotline indicated he might have died if he had consumed the drugs from the other bottle. Finally, my mother conceded to get a crate. That night, Jack violently tore apart the metal bars of the crate while yelping and making noise, resulting in my being unable to sleep. The following morning, exhausted from a lack of rest, I ended up in a car accident that nearly totaled my vehicle. So we reverted to allowing him to roam. Then, a week ago today, the significant incident occurred. A new remote had arrived a day earlier than expected. My father had a rough day at work and was in a foul mood. After inserting the batteries into the remote, he walked into the kitchen to dispose of the packaging and crunch. My father lost his temper. This was the tipping point after numerous damaging incidents, totaling quite a bit financially. In the past, he had been compliant with my mother regarding the situation, but this was the final straw. He began hitting Jack not with kicks or punches, but still using open-handed slaps, dragging him around while shouting angrily at the dog. My mother pleaded with him to stop. After about a minute of this escalation, he pushed Jack outside and left for a drive to calm down. I want to clarify that I do not believe the beating was severe enough to leave bruises. It was not brutal in nature, but more intended to instill fear, which was still extremely inappropriate and disturbing. My mother eventually contacted the agency to return Jack, and they agreed to take him back. However, before confirming the return, they told me explicitly, "I know you wanted him gone, and you made some valid points, but I want you to understand that I am not doing this because of your comments. I am doing it because of him," while mouthing the words and gesturing at my father. That was only last Tuesday. When I returned home on Wednesday, less than 24 hours after the incident, my mother was already reaching out to find another foster dog. After a lengthy discussion, she conceded that we should take a break from fostering. However, this afternoon, I was informed that another dog is scheduled to come for fostering less than a week after Jack's return. I have doubts that my mother disclosed the events that transpired to the foster agency, as they would not have approved another dog so soon. The new dog is described as sweet and very undernourished, a neglect case from a hoarder, so I doubt she will pose trouble. Nevertheless, I am perplexed and genuinely concerned that my mother feels compelled to seek out another foster dog immediately, especially after witnessing her husband being aggressive toward a previously fostered dog just last Tuesday. Would it be excessive for me to contact the person in charge of the foster agency to inform them about these incidents? I suspect they would not approve my parents for fostering if they were aware of the situation. But since I am autistic and often feel incorrect and accustomed to my parents asserting that I am mistaken, it is challenging for me to determine what action to take. I frequently find myself questioning my own judgment. I am anxious as I work part-time and depend on them significantly. While I doubt they would expel me, the possibility still causes me great apprehension. I am aware that my parents would interpret my call as a wholly spiteful and personal attack, rather than an effort to express concern. I am uncertain how to address their likely response. I am simply tired of feeling anxious for my cats and the dogs we bring into our home. Story 4. I sent my coworker a Valentine's gift after she ghosted me. She called me a psycho and threatened to involve the police. I am a 24-year-old female who works in graphic design. Recently, I began a new job in December, and things got off to a good start as I connected well with nearly everyone, especially my 24-year-old female coworker, Max. We quickly became friends. Initially, Max would touch me casually at work and linger behind me a bit longer than was necessary. While I didn't mind this, I found it enjoyable. The interactions led to some charged moments of eye contact filled with unspoken attraction. However, I refrained from acting on these feelings at first, and that was the extent of it. Why didn't I pursue it further? Max had a girlfriend, and I didn't want to interfere in their relationship. I could see, though, that there were issues there. My coworkers often discussed how out of control Max's girlfriend was. They claimed that Max had endured a lot due to this girlfriend, describing her as controlling and possessive, and not allowing Max to have friends. While I was skeptical of the narrative, understanding that there are always two sides to a story, I decided to maintain my distance. As time passed, I grew more comfortable in my new role, having been there for roughly 2 weeks. One day, my supervisor directed Max and me to take a trip across the large property for work-related purposes. Naturally, Max offered to drive us, and I gladly accepted. While driving, she started questioning me about why I didn't talk to her much at work, and if I was interested in getting to know her better. I was certainly attracted to Max, but I was also conscious of her ongoing relationship. I replied honestly, "I thought you had a girlfriend," and left it at that. After we departed from the car, she unexpectedly gave me her phone number, suggesting I reach out when we met again. We saved each other's contacts, and this is where things became more complicated. Our texting began innocently enough, during which we agreed to be friends at work. She encouraged me to open up to her, and I complied. The following day, I found myself in the backseat of her car after work. Before you judge, let me explain we had clocked out, and while in the parking lot, she waved me to come talk to her around 11 p.m. As we chatted, she began sharing the difficulties in her relationship. She described how her girlfriend had traumatized her and indicated they were planning to break up the next day following our encounter. She expressed that her actions were essentially insignificant at that point since she would be single within 24 hours. That night, we shared a kiss, nothing more. I felt uneasy as things progressed because she was still technically involved with someone else, but the next day she texted me that she was single, leading me to think I was clear to pursue her. This pattern continued for the subsequent 3 nights, with us making out and engaging in more, sharing music we both enjoyed, and even exchanging some intimate text messages. Life at work remained normal, yet it became evident that our coworkers were aware of our budding romance. We didn't make a secret of it, often being seen together and getting into each other's cars after work. Most people caught on fairly quickly. After about 2 weeks of this arrangement, neither Max nor I took the situation particularly seriously. I'd mentioned I could never envision a relationship with her, particularly because I suspected she could not be faithful. Max often indicated she couldn't be with me because I expressed that I wasn't seeking anything serious at the moment. Then everything took a downturn. On a Friday night, we were in her car when I made the error of telling her I had considered not talking to you anymore, because I felt this situation lacked longevity. She laughed it off, as we frequently joked about being just coworkers. She mentioned having coffee with my supervisor the next morning, which meant she needed to leave a bit early that evening. That weekend, we didn't communicate much. However, I sent her a simple text asking, "Are you still mine?" To which she replied, "Of course." When Monday rolled around, I was met with an icy reception. Max completely ignored me, stopped texting, and when I reached out, her responses were curt and lacking warmth. I decided to take a step back, waiting until I got home to message her. When I asked about her sudden decrease in communication, she suddenly mentioned she was talking to someone. Women, right? She inquired if I was all right with that, and I responded, "That's fine if that's what's best for you." Her acknowledgement was short, and when I asked if I could keep texting her, I received no reply. It has now been a month without contact. An entire month. This is an experience I have not encountered before with anyone. I began to worry that I had done something wrong. Yet, during that month, there were moments when she smiled at me or attempted to speak when we crossed paths. Perhaps she was genuinely pursuing someone new, or had I upset her? Being a romantic at heart, I felt compelled to do something kind. So, what did I do? I sent her a Valentine's gift to her home yesterday. Since she had taken us there before, I remembered the address, knowing we lived just 5 minutes apart. During our brief time together, she had come to my place a few times and vice versa, though we never entered each other's homes. So I sent her chocolates accompanied by a heartfelt 4x6 glossy note, simply saying, "I hope your Valentine's Day is nice." I didn't include my name in the card, but I added a nickname I occasionally used for her, ensuring she would know exactly who the sender was. I thought it was a considerate gesture to show I was still thinking of her on this occasion. She, however, did not interpret it that way. She responded with an extensive text, labeling me a psycho and a possessive coworker. She expressed that sending her something after not being in contact was disrespectful to her and her family, warning me to refrain from repeating such actions or she would involve the authorities. I replied, asking her why she called me a psycho. I simply wanted her to know I was thinking of her. I apologized, stating I wouldn't send her anything further. I believed my action to be thoughtful, considering her presence had only been within my personal space a month prior. Now, on Valentine's Day, I am left questioning why I even tried at all and whether I am actually a psycho, while being blocked on all communication platforms. It's not as if I stalked or harassed her, I merely sent her a Valentine's gift. I hadn't messaged her at all for the month until I received her paragraph. Besides, she had pursued me initially. Am I in the wrong? Am I indeed a psycho, or perhaps both? Do you think there's a possibility she will bring this situation up at work? If so, I would genuinely appreciate some additional insight before that occurs. In summary, I began to engage with a coworker who was experiencing a tumultuous breakup. She subsequently ghosted me after mentioning she was talking to someone. Believing I might have erred, I sent her a Valentine's gift after a month of silence. In response, she accused me of being a psycho and demanded I not engage in such behavior again, threatening to involve the authorities. Will she bring this up at work? I would like more perspective on this before that transpires.